I'm Mark.
And I'm Josh.
And this is Alter Ego Comics TV, episode number 141. This is the comic book review show by comic book fans, for comic book fans, where we only talk about the good stuff. Really good stuff this week, all across the board, really. I enjoyed every book I read this week, and it's a rare, not a rare week, but we don't talk about those weeks as much as we should. So we really could talk about a lot more, but we're short on time this week, so let's kick things off with Sex Criminals, number 3, by Matt Fraction and Chip Zdarsky. This book is awesome. This is about a man and a woman who both have the ability to freeze time when they reach climax during intercourse. Parental discretion is advised on this episode of Alter Ego Comics TV.
Full disclosure, it doesn't actually have to be during intercourse.
Right, just when they reach climax. Solo or as part of a team.
There's some things you just don't think you're going to be talking about on a comic book
Team
show.
Sex Criminals. Woo! And the subtitle of this issue, is it just this? Has each issue had a subtitle, or is it this first time? My Sexual Errors and Misfortunes, 2001 to the Present. And Josh said that this is the name of his autobiography. Yes. So we get the main characters moving the story along here. We find out a little bit more about why they're robbing the bank that we see in the first issue. And it really doesn't even matter what this is about, honestly, because it is such good storytelling. This is good comics, folks. There is no reason on earth that those of you reading Saga should not be reading Sex Criminals. It is equally as well written. The artwork is excellent, and it's got laugh out loud moments. It's got personal moments. There's a lot of sex talk, yeah. So I mean, we're adults here. If you're 18 and over, maybe even 21 and over, I don't know. In some states, 21 and over. But it's just so bleeping good. It disappoints me that it's not reaching Saga numbers, and maybe it will over time. But I do want to point out that in issue number 3, there's a scene where one of the characters decides to sing Queen's Fat Bottom Girls in a pool hall, and Fraction wasn't able to get the rights to the lyrics yet, but they're hoping they do. So instead of the lyrics, we get Fraction chiming in her word bubbles about how Freddie Mercury's awesome and what the plan is to get the rights and this sort of thing. So if you wait for the trade on this one and they get the rights, you're not going to be able to read any of that happened, because what'll happen is the song lyrics will magically appear there instead of this awesome Matt Fraction editorial that appears. And it's just so good. And I have to, again, give a big thumbs up to the letters page. Letters pages in this book. It took me as long to get through the letters pages as it did for me to read the comic. And it's so worth the $3.50. Wouldn't you agree, sir?
I concur.
Yes.
And if you want to talk about writers doing editorials and word balloons, then this week we have to talk about Harley Quinn 0. This is written by Amanda Conner and Jimmy Palmiotti, and drawn by everyone you can imagine. Charlie Adler, Art Baltazar, Becky Cloonan, I was going to say Toby Keith, but it's Tony Daniel and Sam Keith. Bruce Timm, there's a Jim Lee page in here, sort of. Stephanie Rue, Chad Hardin, I don't know who that one is. Adam
He's
Hughes,
the guy
Dave
that,
Johnson.
I believe, won the talent contest to get to be in the book.
Good on you, Chad Hardin.
Darwin Cook.
Darwin Cook.
Over Darwin Cook.
Walt Simonson.
Adam Hughes. You said Adam Hughes?
I did say Hughes.
Dave Johnson.
Yeah. There's a lot of people. And essentially, the regular ongoing Harley Quinn series starts in a little while, but this 0 issue is kind of a fun lead-in setup book. It's essentially, it's Connor and Palmiotti talking to Harley Quinn through the word bubbles, like in Deadpool or anything else where they break the fourth wall, and choosing who the artists are going to be. So Harley gets drawn for a page by this person, and they all comment on it, and it's just priceless. You know, there's comic book industry in-jokes, there's mayhem. I mean, basically, you've taken a bunch of really talented people and say, draw one page of Harley Quinn, whatever you want, and then the writers went back and made fun of it, essentially. So if you like Deadpool or anything like that, this is just a laugh a minute. Great book. It also makes a great convention book, because you can take it to one convention and get 40 people to sign this one issue rather than lugging around a little long box on a cart.
Don't be that
cool.
Guy.
Don't be
or
that
girl,
guy.
Please.
So Harley Quinn 0, just worth every penny of its $2.99 cover price.
If you enjoy, as Josh said, Deadpool, if you enjoy Hawkeye over at Marvel, if you're looking for the lighter side of the DC universe, at least in this Zero issue, this is what you get. And I mentioned last week that a lot of DC stuff isn't working for me right now. And I don't know if it's necessarily because it's really dark, but this was a shining light in the DC universe and a breath of fresh air and a whole lot of fun.
And parts of it were dark, but it was humor dark, not...
Dark humor.
Yeah.
Like good humor, the ice cream.
Black comedy, yes.
Yes. Superior Spider-Man Annual #1. This is written by Christos Gage with art by Javier Rodriguez. Essentially, this is another issue of Superior Spider-Man, and that's why I added it to my list of things to talk to you about today, because some of you may overlook it because it's an annual, and annuals just don't mean what they used to, kids. Annual, the first appearance of Rogue, the character from the X-Men, appeared in an Avengers annual. Spider-Man married Mary Jane in an annual. Lots of stuff happened in the annuals of days gone by, but it's kind of in the late 80s through the 90s, annuals began to mean nothing. But they're back to meaning something with Superior Spider-Man Annual #1. This actually lets us catch up with Aunt May and Jay Jameson, and Peter is there, of course. We know that Peter Parker, as we knew him, does not exist any longer. So this is Otto Octavius in the body of Peter Parker, reestablishing the connection with his aunt and his uncle. I guess it's uncle-in-law, right?
Maybe.
Would that work? I don't know. Plus, they reintroduce a very cool character that I loved in the late 80s and early 90s called Blackout, who was a Ghost Rider villain, a Dan Ketch Ghost Rider villain. And in fact, Doc Ock / Peter Parker / Spider-Man consults with Danny Ketch via Skype or something to find out about the character of Blackout. So if you were a fan of the Dan Ketch era Ghost Rider, you want to check this one out. And if you've been reading Superior Spider-Man, this is a can't-miss issue. It basically picks up right from where the last one left off, where Peter starts his own company, and we're off and running. So lots of action. The artwork by Javier Rodriguez was very cool, and I think we've seen him do fill-ins on Daredevil and possibly Hawkeye. Don't hold me to that. So a very pleasant surprise. I didn't know what to expect, as I said, because annuals are kind of meaningless these days, but this one has a lot of substance.
And up next, we've got Imagine Agents #2, written by Brian Jones with art by someone named Bachan, or Bacan. It's just Bachan. They don't even have a first name. I think it's an acronym for like a computer somewhere that draws comic books. I don't know. Imagine Agents, the first issue got a little bit overlooked because that came out in a week that was full of indie awesomeness, but I definitely think you should check out the first one, which we still have in stock, or the second one. The premise is kind of a Men in Black organization, but rather than looking after aliens, they look after children's imaginary friends. Once the children outgrow the imaginary friends, they have to still be out in the world somewhere without their connection to the child, and somebody has to look after them. And you get this cool kind of imaginary friend town where they're all kind of corralled together, and they've got the police chief that's a T-Rex that's really small and female, and it's just a lot of fun. It's very whimsical in its nature, but it's also a very serious story. There's a lot of interpersonal stuff, and when you talk about, anytime you talk about childhood development, you're talking about things that resonate with a lot of people, and there are some moments in both issues of this book that are very cool and very resonant. They're things that a lot of people will understand. And my favorite part of this issue, actually, is seeing all the random imaginary friends. I mean, the idea of a child's imagination drawn out in this world and seeing some of the weird creatures they've got going on, and there's machinations of evil imaginary friends, or imaginary friends who are potentially abused by their children or what, who have now decided to turn to evil and want to change the status quo and prevent them from being at the whims of what are really the crappiest humans. I mean, they're stuck with children, which are just awful. But Imagine Agents, lots of fun, a very different, offbeat book that you should totally check out.
New this week, and one of the most exciting books this week, ScoobyDoo Team Up, #1. This has been a long time coming. This is rated E for everyone. And Scooby-Doo teams up with Batman and Robin. So it's Scooby-Doo and the Mystery Incorporated gang teaming up with Batman and Robin to take on Man-Bat. And it's written by Shally Fish, so let me get this out of the way right here. Shally Fish is an amazing writer. She, I think it's a he, has done Superman Adventures stories, did some backups in Action Comics in the New 52. but has a really good grasp on the voices of these characters and to make them all ages appropriate, which not every writer does. Mark Miller. So it was just great to read this. And I actually sat down with my 4-year-old and read this to him last night, and he loved it and wants a copy for himself. But if you have a child or children that you want to get into comics and they're in that kind of preschool, kindergarten, early elementary school range, you absolutely want to pick this one up. I don't know what else to say. The artwork is amazing. It's by Dario Brizuela. Lots of Latin Americans working in comics these days.
It's like baseball. They're just taking over.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
No.
But one of the things I loved about this is it's entertaining enough and action-packed for a small child, but amusing enough for an adult as well. They actually make a reference to the last time that they teamed up, or that they met up with, that the Scooby Gang met up with Batman and Robin, was when they took on the Joker and Penguin, which of course goes back to the Scooby-Doo Adventures show of the 1970s, which I remember watching and have seen countless times, where the Scooby-Doo Gang, what was it called? It was
What?
There was a name for the show. It was Scooby-Doo something. It may have been Scooby-Doo Adventures. But each week they teamed up with somebody different.
With Don Knotts.
They teamed up with Don Knotts and Davy Jones and the Harlem Globetrotters and Phyllis Diller and Mama Cass. And I mean, it was crazy. Yeah, you remember watching this, right? If you're over 30, maybe? It was just so awesome. And Daphne makes a reference. Oh, it seems like there wasn't a week that would go by where we didn't team up with a singer or a basketball player or something. So this is definitely a callback to those of us that grew up with that cartoon show. So to have all these characters together, I mean, this is a can't-miss situation here, folks. You give this to a boy or a girl who's in that 4, 5, 6 range, Scooby-Doo and Batman and Robin in the same comic. Pick it up. I do want to give you a warning, though. This is shipping every other month. So that gives the child plenty of time to get through it. But just so you know, when you come back a month later and you don't see issue number 2, it's going to be another month after that. So it does ship every other month. It apparently is also a mini-series. I don't know if DC knows what to do with it. I don't know if they're waiting to see.
They're testing the waters.
They're testing the waters to see what sales look like, because statistically speaking, kids' comics from the big 2 do not perform well. But this has the potential to be just an amazing breakout book. I've gone on long enough.
Alter Ego Comics, where we talk about sex criminals and Scooby-Doo.
Yes.
They're
Both
great.
ends of the spectrum.
Both ends. Next up, we've got Scott Snyder's The Wake, number 5 of 10, written by Snyder, drawn by Sean Murphy. The Wake's just been really great from the beginning, and I think what really attracts me to the book is that I don't know what it is. I mean, you've got this, seriously, every issue there have been jumping around chronological points. You've got things that appear to be set with like the early cavemen type humans. You've got things set in a far future that it seems sunken and apocalyptic, and you've got stuff set in roughly the present with some whale biologists. And they've really done a great job of keeping them separate and helping them all drive together into a great story. Recently, the last couple issues, people in the present have been dying off like crazy. These mermen, monster fish people things have just been eating and destroying the scientists we have on hand, and it's gotten really serious for the middle of a 10-issue book. And at the end of this one, we see what kicks off what they're calling The Wake Part 2, or is it the Part 2, or what's it called?
I think it's called Part 2.
Yeah, The Wake Part 2, which takes us to the aftermath of these attacks, and it's just really great. I was kind of enjoying it, but now I'm super amped to see where this goes in Part 2, which kicks off in February. So if you enjoy Snyder's work on American Vampire, or of course Batman, The Wake is an awesome book to check out.
This was a pulse-pounding page-turner, folks. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and then when you get to the end and you see where we're going next, and Snyder actually includes a page of prose at the end, just kind of explaining what's going on and that they're taking a break until February. So pick up issue number 5, come back in February for The Wake number 6 and Scooby-Doo Team-Up number 2.
And Sandman Overture.
Yes, Sandman Overture 2, which has now also been delayed.
February's going to be a great month.
It's a great month for lovers. Sex criminals. That'll do it for this week. Thanks for watching. Leave us questions, comments down below, and let us know what you think. Are you reading any of these things? Are you checking out the books that we're talking about? If you're local, come on down and see us at Alter Ego Comics, or head to your local comic book store. Support your local store, support print, support comics. See you next time.